Welcome to the Freelance Unlocked Behind the Scenes series, where I'm showcasing amazing people who will be at a Freelance Unlocked Conference, the first and the best conference for freelancers that is made with love, and it'll take place in Berlin on May 14th, 15th, 2025. If you are a freelancer in Europe, it's an event made for you to learn, exchange experiences, and build your network of great freelancers and experts who move the freelance economy forward. So go to freelanceunlocked.com, grab your ticket right away. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am and Freelance Unlocked. And my guest is Matthew Mottola, the CEO of Human Cloud, a global research and advisory firm at the intersection of technology and work, the author of the Human Cloud book, and the host of the Human Cloud podcast, a future freelance ambassador, and one of the most charismatic speakers of the Freelance Unlocked 2024. So, hello, Matt.
Gary, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for round two. Round one was a smashing success. And so round two, I can't imagine what you all have in store. Maybe you'll tell me some of the surprises and secrets this time around. But no, it was such an incredible event. I'm going to go on a whim and say it was one of the best events of last year by far, not just for freelance, but everything related to product marketing, sales, whatever, innovation. It was by far one of the best conferences.
I'll be honest, I didn't pay Matt to say that. So
No.
let's continue.
I'll take my 20 year now. It's too hard to pay. We're in different countries.
Exactly. What changed in your freelancing life during the last year?
Oof. So I'm going to give it first. I'm going to give it broad, and then I'm going to give it very direct. So from a broad perspective, it was a rough year for most. There's no getting away from that. Our data says that around 80% of both freelancers and freelance platforms were about neutral. So between 10% lost money, 10% growth, but in between that interval. Some did really well, some did really bad. Freelancers did better than some of the platforms. So there were a lot of platforms that no longer exist. So last year was tough, right? And I'm not an economist, but we saw inflation, we saw supply, right? It was kind of like the just everything was thrown at us, and freelance did take a hit, but not as bad as others, right? And not as bad as our comparables. So at a high level, that's the industry. Now, in terms of the micro and us specifically, one of the very specific things that happened was we had to tighten our belt. And I assume that a lot of you freelancers also felt this, and everyone felt this. We had to become more efficient ourselves. We had to become closer to our customers, and we had to provide just a better experience. The best way that I'd put it is, making $1 today is a hell of a lot harder than making $1 yesterday. And the things you have to do to get that dollar are just way harder. And so, I'll give some like practical examples of that. My family and I, we lived in Savannah, Georgia, from 2021 to 2023. It's a small town in the US. We loved it to death. But in order to get that dollar, I was having to hop on a flight a lot more. And whether that was to close the deal, to keep the deal going, to open the deal, I was flying a ton, and I still am. So we had to move. Right now we're based in Atlanta, Georgia, at the biggest airport in the US. So that was like one quick example. Another example is we deeply had to understand what our client relationships looked like. And so from 2020 to 2023, we could kind of get away with just saying, yep, all right, this is the goal, and here's the invoice, right? And we could kind of get away with that slack. I mean, this past year, we really had to tighten up. What is our exact offering? What are the exact outcomes? What do the on-ramp, off-ramps look like? We kind of actually had to predict for, this client's going to last 3 months based off of this, and that's okay. And so overall, it was a tough year. I think it was a good year in terms of we needed it. And sort of the last thing I'll say too is like the 2020 to 2023, I think part of why it felt like such a rough year is there was an artificial inflation of both remote work and freelance, in that overnight, everyone was exposed to remote work. Everyone was exposed to freelance, and the supply side of our industry, the freelancer side, I mean, everyone, right? There was a wave of freelancers, and the demand wasn't ready. The companies weren't ready necessarily. So it did feel a little bit like, whoa, how come all this momentum? But I do have some data to show that, listen, we're actually in a really good spot as an industry. But overall, it was a year of tightening the belt.
I feel like there are so many big companies are calling for people to come back to offices, and it feels like from freelance perspective, it's not bad because it will be less freelancers on the market, because you can't be a freelancer while sitting in the office. Maybe you can, but most likely not. And I'm curious, what is your quick take on the freelance economy? What will happen in 2025?
So we are calling it, some are calling it a year of efficiency. From a freelance perspective, we call it a return to impact. And what I mean by that is for a while now, and it's obviously industry dependent, but when you looked at sort of the success of an employee, and I'm going to sound like a ruthless CEO, the ROI per employee, right? Like there is an ROI per headcount, per contractor, per vendor, per freelancer. There is an ROI. But for the most part, especially large companies, they got away with just adding people. And the incentive structure around leadership, for the most part, was very much acquire, 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 more headcount, more headcount, more headcount. The bigger you are, the better you look. You must be a better company if you're bigger. And over the last year, it's been gutted. And sitting here in the US right now, but we have a fully global perspective, whether explicit or implicit, companies are laying off, downsizing, and having a return to efficiency is what they're calling it, but mostly a return to impact. And so if you look at a team and an org might have been 5,000. And today that org is now 1,000. Tomorrow it's going to be 500. And companies are very intentionally reducing to get to the high performers. Now, in terms of freelancers, we inherently are the top performers because we have to be, because we wouldn't get the next deal or we wouldn't keep the client. Because unlike a full-time employment contract that we basically say, we'll trade you our time and our loyalty, and in return, you're going to pay us these benefits and not lay us off, as a freelancer, we're saying, we're going to give you this impact, right? If you are a product freelancer, I'm going to build out these user stories, or I'm going to drive this product. And in 6 months, if this isn't where we're at, you're not going to renew the contract. So at a high level, I'd say the freelance economy, we are seeing growth. So I don't want to like be totally negative. We have persisted through one of the toughest economies I've personally ever seen and we've seen. From a numbers perspective, we still have 10 to 30% growth, depending on how you look at the data. And this is fully global. Yuri, Poland actually is higher. So some areas are higher growth. But so overall, there's higher growth. But what's happening is everyone's tightening the belt and it's more of a year for impact. And so the good freelancers are doing better than ever. What also is happening is that there are some executives that left corporate that are now doing really well in a freelance capacity because they took their leadership understanding, meaning just how do you run a team, how do you manage a team, how do you manage your boss? They're taking that and they're excelling mightily in the freelance space just because they're applying that same logic. So overall, we call it year for impact. That's sort of what we're seeing, and I think it's a really good thing for the freelance economy, but everything has growing pains, and so it is a tough adjustment.
You've told good freelancers, and I will definitely ask you more a little later. But for now, give me a sneak peek into what you'll be talking about on the Freelance Unlocked 2025 stage.
So I actually think, Nuri, you're one of the things that you said before, which is how to beat the feast or famine. I think overall, when you look at me, when you look at Human Cloud, all we really care about is the flexible, we call it flexible workforce, but is the flexible workforce growing? And we will do whatever it takes for it to grow. And that means that for us, our business is three-sided, meaning we help the companies, we help the platforms, we help the freelancers. So we have to help the companies understand how to leverage flexible talent. We have to help the platforms win, and we have to help the freelancers. So literally, we'll do whatever it takes for flexible talent to grow. And at Freelance Unlocked, we'll be talking about sort of what we learned, meaning what do the companies need from you, and you as the freelancer, what's differentiating what we're seeing. And we'll define good later, but very kind of just like objectively, I'm going to define it as the top 10% earners. That's how I'll define it.
What is one thing that freelancers who are trapped in the feast and famine cycle are doing wrong?
Short-term versus long-term mindset. And a short-term mindset, I would say, is what gig do I have tomorrow? And long-term mindset is how's my pipeline look and how am I expanding my current client base? That is like the core fundamental difference between when we see, good freelancers and freelancers that seem trapped, right, in the feast or famine. The short term says, all right, gigs up, worked really hard. Let me go to a platform and find another gig, right? And they go one by one. That's like, if I could, all the way to the left is like the worst thing we've seen. That looks like the worst. All the
Yeah.
way to the right, which is the freelancer who has 2 to 5 clients at one time. They have a really, really, really healthy working relationship with their clients, but also their pipeline. And so pipeline meaning their potential clients. So if one client goes out, it's usually not a surprise when their clients go off. They've planned for that, they've predicted it, but they also have a pipeline of people ready. And so that'd be, very quickly, short-term versus long-term mindset. Short-term equals get me my gig. Long-term equals help me build my business. And the build my business freelancers seem to be doing significantly better.
What are good freelancers doing in order to build their pipeline and to ensure that they have a stream of clients?
So it's funny actually. I'll kind of skip to the end in terms of one of the questions. So our recommendation for both platforms and freelancers is there's 3 S's that they're going to have to solve for. And every second that they're thinking, am I doing the right thing? Literally, I would put these S's on a sticky note and put it on your computer. So the first one is specializing. So the best freelancers, they do specialize what their specific niche is. So they're not just a software developer. They specialize either in their specific industry, their specific region, and sometimes even the tools and technologies. So like I'm a specific Java developer, and this is what I've done. So that's the specialize. That's crucially important because the companies need to now justify and validate that their investment is the right one. They can't just go hire 50 developers anymore. So specialize. Second is the strategy. So I would say sort of, and this is where a lot of freelancers want to throw tomatoes at me. So one of the beauties of freelancing is you can focus on your work, right? There's none of the politics, the bureaucracy, the forced like trainings, right? Yeah, see, exactly. So
Kinda.
right, kind of. The reality is that the person hiring you wants to work with as little people as possible as they need to get what they need to get done. And so whether you are a direct report as a full-time employee or you are a consultancy that's a vendor to them or you're the freelancer, no matter what, the leaders with big budgets, they just want someone to solve their problem. And so what that looks like is, and the reason we say strategy is because you understand how to drive strategic level change. So if you're a web developer, it's not about shipping code. It's about driving users that drive revenue and driving users that convert into revenue. So being able to own the strategy is the second component of that. The third one and the last one is, and this term is so boring, service layer. Literally so boring, right? So specialized strategy and service layer. Service layer, coming back to the person that's hiring you wants to hire as little people as possible. That service layer is literally you managing and you saying, hey, hiring manager that's hiring me, or hey, CEO, hey, executive, you don't need to hire 50 of me. Hire just me, and I'll provide you the service that drives either the outcomes, the impact, whatever you need, that drives that. And so a service layer usually looks like client management. It looks like potentially, and I'm not saying you have to, potentially freelancer management as well. You might have freelancers in your network that you're collaborating with. And maybe instead of just I write articles, you drive content and you have some people that help with the research, some people that help with the publishing and the promotion. And so you're providing that full service. And then also it looks like just being good with your client. And so, and this is where freelancers really want to throw tomatoes at me because they're like, I didn't do this to then have a boss, right? It's like, I didn't freelance to then have a boss. Well, unfortunately, we are a service business, right? We still are a professional service business. We're not selling subs, right? We're not a restaurant that just gives you food and then goes away. Like we are a service-based business and a people-based business. And so client relationships and client leadership is crucial. So those are 3 things, Nuri, not to skip to the end, but specialize, have the strategy, and have that service.
Those who listen now, what is one small step to take today to improve their freelancing business? Just in case they're got in the bubble and don't know how it works. So what is something that experienced freelancers are missing nowadays from your perspective?
I would say scope out your outcomes and try to scope that into what was the impact, how long did it take, and how much did it cost? And I would say go get three specific examples of this. And I know you and I kind of both have a computer science brain a little bit. So like literally create multiple packets of what your offering is. And that packet is what you're going to use when you're stuck in an elevator, you meet a client for the first time, whatever it is. Good freelancers, one thing we have noticed is that even though there's, hundreds of talent platforms out there, the good freelancers, they usually don't need the work when they get it, and they usually don't need to bid for jobs. Now, this isn't 100% true, right? So like every freelancer needs to bid it eventually, but the good ones are able to in 5 seconds say, this is who I am, this is what I can do, this is how much it's going to cost. And so, the quick thing that you can do right now, freelancer, if you're stuck in the weeds, literally look at everything you've done over the past 2 years and just try to create the packets of what was the impact, how long did it take, and what was the cost. And I would say personally, just start to build up a repository of those packets, of those success stories and case studies, and kind of coming back to tightening the belt. Be okay if a client says, no, don't want that. That's a hell of a lot better than having a conversation for 3 months only to find out that they didn't want what you actually provide, right? So that'd be my quick thing. Go build those packets.
Start with the hourly rate. After you shout out your hourly rates, then let's see how we can work together. But yeah, I feel like when you are having everything in your mind right away that can't say to anyone, when I'm like right now, yeah, I feel like it's something that freelancers lack, really lacks, because I'm talking to many, many different freelancers, like, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing this, and I can do this, and I can also do this. And if you ask me, I can do this. Also, I'm learning this and this and this. I'm like, but what do you do? So it's always like hard to really clearly understand. And yeah, I totally get it. So
Here's the challenger. So maybe, because I totally agree with you, for you freelancers, whatever you think you're doing, reduce when someone asks who you are, what you do. Literally say, what would you say if you had to say, I'm the best at blank? You can say one thing. You only have one thing, right? But that's what you're going to need to be able to communicate with. And one thing I do want to add here is like, there's the focus time, there's the unfocused time. So let's be real. A couple hours a day, you're scrolling on social media, you're browsing the internet, you're just doing things that are totally unplanned and spontaneous, right? Well, as a freelancer, I assume that some of those activities you're doing can lead to business if you're ready for the business. So I'll give one quick example. When I, in my freelancing, so one of the coffee shops that I would go to, listen, I didn't go to this coffee shop to try to win business, but I've been going for a couple months. I'm staying there later. The owner's there. We get in a conversation. They turn into a client, right? Like there's the spontaneous things that you're not planning. But if you have your packets built up, you know how to say I'm the best at whatever that one thing is, then work is readily available for you. It's not easily visible and you have to be ready for it.
build it, they will come. Prepare your offer, they will come. Okay.
Not directly.
Matt, I wish to have the sky's the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question. What would you say to your friend if they asked you whether they should go to the Freelance Unlocked 2025?
Oh, it's easy. Yes. Easiest question. Yeah, Yuri. I don't have to really say anymore. No, I'd say a couple things. I'd say no matter what, no matter what you're going through, no matter how tough or good your business is, you need people who are doing similar things to you. There's a reason that every good company does have an advisory board, right? There's a reason that every good leader has a couple of advisors that they can always turn to. So when things go wrong for me, I got a couple of people that I call up. Now, Freelance Unlocked is literally such a hyper specialized and relevant conference for freelancers. And that's very unique. A lot of conferences that, other conferences that you could go to, most likely they're not going to be focused on freelance. And so you might go and you're just going to get sold to by a bunch of different types of companies. This one, you're literally just hearing from the best freelance, and I would say the best freelancers in the world. you're meeting them, you're learning from them, you're talking shop. You might figure out that there's a couple of freelancers that you can directly collaborate with. And I'm going to define collaborating as referring work to or subcontracting to expand the scope of your work. Like the opportunities are endless, and you guys do such a good job, right? And you're also going to learn from you, Yuri. I can't wait to finally see you this year. You're going to learn from Tomas, right? You're going to learn from Tomas, Manuel, Mark. There's so many cool people. And the last thing I'd say is the pretzels are pretty good. So pretzels are pretty good, and Berlin has really good food. So if you do get bored, I doubt it. Just duck out within walking distance. There's lots of good restaurants.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn. Matthew Mottola should be easy to find. If not there, Human Cloud as well. You can find us as well as humancloud.work. We're idiots instead of .com. We chose .work. It's been a nightmare, Yuri, especially with email marketing. But no, I'd love to connect with all of you. Matthew Mottola, connect with me on LinkedIn, and can't wait to see you in person. And Yuri, I'm
Yeah.
going to say, I'm not going to accept any connections until I see you in person. Then after the conference, I'll accept them. But until the conference, you got to meet in person.
Deal, man. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom even before the conference. And I really can't wait to finally, hopefully, meet you on Freelance Unlocked and learn from you in the real world.
I can't wait. Yuri, thank you so much, man.
And for those who listen, I hope you already learned from Matt's experience, and will say thank you to him in person at the Freelance Unlocked Conference on May 14th, 15th, 2025 in Berlin. So go to freelanceunlocked.com, grab your ticket, and meet you there.